So remember that a of 1, we're calling our sequence a in this case. That's our first term. That's going to be 7 here. So 7 will go into our box. And for our pattern, it's always to find the nth term, we take the term before it and multiply by r, our common ratio. So to find that, remember from the last example, you can take any number you want and just divide by the one before it. And usually you can just take the smaller numbers and do division that way since it's usually simpler, but you can choose whatever you want. So let's just do 28 and minus 14. So we take one number, we divide it by the number before it, and 28 over 14 is 2, but we have a negative, so negative 2 is our common ratio. But just to prove that this is correct, we could have also done minus 14, divide by 7, since that's before it, and that's also negative 2. So choose any number you want and divide by the one before it to figure out that common ratio. And again, our common ratio is going to go in this box here where we have our pattern. Now, just to double check everything, let's make sure this works. So when we find a of 2, it's going to be a of 2 minus 1, or a of 1, our first term, multiplied by 2. Negative 2. And our first term is 7. 7 times minus 2 is negative 14. So that worked. And you don't really have to do a third one, but let's just get some extra practice. So this would be a of 2 now. Our second term multiplied by negative 2. And our second term was minus 14. So minus 14 times negative 2. The negatives cancel. And we get 28, which is also part of our sequence. So with checking, we can feel confident that these are the correct answers. So let's do 2 more problems. And for this one, just like the last one, we know our first term, we're given that. That's going to be 16. But the hard part is going to be to find that common ratio. Since we know in this box here, this is our common ratio, our r value, the number we're going to multiply by to go from one term to the next. And so let's just choose any 2 numbers. And in this case, I'm going to choose the decimal and the whole number, since that'll be a little bit easier. But in this case, it's tricky for any of these since you're going to have decimals. So we have 3.2, and we will divide by the number before that, 16. And 3.2 over 16, well, we could use long division, we can use a calculator, or we can multiply top and bottom by 10 to make these whole numbers and then simplify the fraction. So multiplying top and bottom by 10, we get 32 over 160. Now, both of these numbers, you might notice, are divisible by 16. So we'll divide them each by 16. 32 over 16 is 2. 160 divided by 16 is 10. Simplifying this, we get 1/5. So that should be our common ratio, which we'll put into the box here. But let's check our work now, just to make sure, since this is a tricky problem. You could also check your common ratio by just choosing 2 other numbers and following a similar pattern. So we know a of 1, so we can find a of 2. So it's the term before that, the first term multiplied by 1/5. So that's going to be 16 multiplied by 1/5, which is 16 over 5. And 5 goes into 16 3 whole times with 1 as a remainder, and 1/5 is 0.2. So our check worked, and that made sense. So you can feel confident that these are the correct answers. Let's do one more example. And this one's another challenging one. This has negatives and decimals. And we know we want to put our first term in the box here. First c of 1, so that's minus 0.1. And we know this term right here, this missing box, this is our common ratio, which we can call r. And we'll find that by just choosing 2 numbers and doing division. So let's, in this case, maybe use minus 2.5 and minus 0.5. So we have minus 2.5 divided by negative 0.5. We know the negatives are going to cancel. And let's do something similar we did in the last problem. Let's just make these whole numbers by multiplying top and bottom by 10. So you get 25 up top and 5 down below, essentially. The decimal just moves when you multiply by 10. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. So it looks like we're multiplying by 5 going from one term to the next, which, looking at the numbers, does make sense. So our common ratio in this case is simply 5. But of course, we want to do a quick check just to make sure this is right. So to find the second term, it will be the term before it. So C of 1 multiplied by 5, but the first term is negative 0.1. And we're taking 1/10 and multiplying it by 5. So we would have 5/10. And the negative will carry along. So that is what we expected it to be. So we can feel confident that these are the correct answers.